A few years ago, during the graveyard shift at a grocery store, we had this coworker who we lovingly dubbed Vroom Vroom. He earned this nickname thanks to his peculiar habit of launching himself, full speed with a shopping trolley. He'd take a running start, leap onto the cart like a kid at a skate park, and then clumsily drift into the next aisle, all while making race car noises. But when I say race car noises, I don't mean the cool revving sounds you'd expect. No, these were more like the frothy sputtering sounds you might hear from a starving child at a fat camp who's just laid eyes on an unexpected all-you-can-eat buffet. It was both impressive and deeply unsettling. Now, as you can imagine, this wasn't exactly the safest way to navigate the store. Vroom Vroom had a habit of narrowly avoiding turning his coworkers into bowling pins, and it was only a matter of time before he reenacted NASCAR's greatest hits in our very own grocery aisles. After dodging what felt like the world's most chaotic shopping cart multiple times in one night, I decided that enough was enough. It was time for a little justice. Armed with determination, I gathered my supplies. A few rolls of plastic wrap and a bulk container of the cheapest liquid honey I could find, because let's face it, I'm a budget-conscious genius. Then, I set to work on my dastardly plan. I knew Vroom Vroom's favorite aisle, was the soup aisle. This was where he unleashed his inner speed demon with reckless abandon. So naturally, this is where I laid my trap. I meticulously stretched the plastic wrap across the entrance to the aisle, making sure it was nearly invisible. Then, with the precision of an artist, I glazed it evenly with honey until it glistened like the world's stickiest spiderweb. Finally, I positioned myself near a display of cotton balls, barely able to contain my anticipation. If there was ever a visual representation of gleeful, it was me at that very moment. Sure enough, within minutes, Vroom Vroom came zooming around the corner, completely unaware of the sugary ambush awaiting him. He hit that plastic wrap with the force of a toddler on a sugar high, and for a moment, time seemed to slow down. He pushed forward about a meter or roughly 3 feet, for those who prefer their measurements imperial, before the laws of physics and sticky substances caught up with him. Like a spring-loaded cartoon character, he was sent flying backward, landing squarely in a pile of sticky, honey-coated, cotton ball-covered confusion. It was a sight to behold. Vroom Vroom, once the terror of the aisles, now a bewildered, sticky mess, looking like some bizarre hybrid between a bee and a snowman. As I stood there, barely containing my laughter, our boss waddled over to investigate the commotion. He took one look at me, then at Vroom Vroom, and in a deadpan tone remarked, "Tar and feathers would have been easier, you know." Without missing a beat, I replied, "Do we sell those?" After that fateful night, it was clear that the battle between Vroom Vroom and me had only just begun. The honey-coated cotton ball incident became legendary among our night shift crew, but rather than discouraging Vroom Vroom, it seemed to ignite a mischievous fire within him. I could see it in his eyes. The war was on. A few nights later, as I clocked in, I noticed something odd. My locker, which I usually kept pristine, was now oozing with the unmistakable scent of sardines. Sure enough, as I opened it, a cascade of oily fish tumbled out, accompanied by a strategically placed note. "Your move, honey boy." Vroom Vroom had struck back, and he did so with a vengeance. I wasn't about to let this fishy assault go unanswered. My next plan required a bit more finesse. I knew Vroom Vroom had a deep-seated fear of clowns, a fact he had let slip during one of our late-night stockroom chats. Armed with this knowledge, I procured a few creepy clown masks from the party supply aisle and enlisted the help of our night crew. We set up the masks in various spots around the store, behind the cereal boxes, peeking out from the dairy section, and, my personal favorite, inside the freezer door, where it would be sure to give Vroom Vroom a good jolt when he reached for his midnight snack. The first sighting was glorious. Vroom Vroom let out a yelp that could probably be heard 3 aisles away. He spent the rest of the night cautiously peeking around corners, half expecting another clown to leap out at him. It was a small victory, but a sweet one. But Vroom Vroom wasn't one to back down. A few nights later, I found that every single item I was supposed to stock had been switched with something from another section. As I opened a box expecting to find canned tomatoes, I was instead greeted with an avalanche of toilet paper. He had relabeled every box in the back room, leading to a night of chaos as I tried to match the items with their rightful places on the shelves. The sheer amount of effort he'd put into this prank was almost impressive, but I was too busy sorting through a pile of misplaced pickles to truly appreciate it. Not one to be outdone, I devised my most elaborate plan yet. I knew Vroom Vroom always took his break at precisely 3 a.m. and enjoyed a can of soda from the vending machine. So I borrowed his favorite drink, shook it up to the point of explosion, and carefully resealed it. Then I placed it back in the vending machine, knowing he'd be the first to buy it. Right on cue, Vroom Vroom sauntered over, popped open his soda, and was immediately met with a geyser of sticky sweetness that drenched him from head to toe. The look on his face was priceless, and for a moment, I thought I might have finally won this prank war. But then I saw that familiar glint in his eye. This was far from over. The next few weeks became a whirlwind of increasingly elaborate pranks. Vroom Vroom replaced my coffee grounds with instant gravy mix, leading to a rather unfortunate first sip one groggy morning. In return, I rigged his cart with a hidden air horn that blasted every time he hit a bump, startling both him and the unsuspecting customers who wandered in during our shift. By now, our nightly duel had become a game of who could outwit the other with the most ridiculous yet harmless antics. Our co-workers were caught in the crossfire more than once, but they took it in stride, enjoying the spectacle as much as we did. One night, however, the unthinkable happened. We both tried to pull off our most ambitious pranks simultaneously. Vroom Vroom had concocted a scheme involving a ceiling tile, a bucket of flour, and a carefully balanced broomstick, while I had rigged up a tripwire connected to a cascade of balloons filled with glitter. The end result was an explosion of flour, glitter, and balloons that covered the entire aisle, and us, in a scene that looked like a unicorn had exploded in a bakery. As we sat there, covered in a sparkling, floury mess, we both burst into laughter. The battle was over, and we had both lost spectacularly. In the end, we called a truce, agreeing that perhaps it was time to retire our pranks, at least for a little while. From that night on, the grocery store was a bit quieter, but the camaraderie between us grew stronger. We still exchanged the occasional mischievous glance, knowing that either one of us could reignite the prank war at any time. But for now, we were content with the memories of our nocturnal battles and the knowledge that, in this strange game of one-upmanship, we were both the winners. Tell in comments your own story, best of them we will add to new video. Subscribe!